Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete episode 15 of our Rimworld Ice Sheet Survival series. A small milestone in the series, but Cambiar will probably not have time to celebrate as he is currently busy researching geothermal power. We started that research project in the last episode, but I believe it is the longest one that Cambiar has done so far and it will therefore take him quite a while to finish. We also safely rescued our Muffalo from hypothermia in the last episode, which definitely came as a bit of a surprise, but we were able to make the necessary adjustments and the Muffalo now has a heated stable, where it is slowly but steadily munching away on the last reserves of pemmican. At night then, we continue in the spirit of the last episode with another cargo drop. If you remember, we had a ton of those in the previous video, and this one once again quite useful. 123 units of alpaca wool, not the best wool when it comes to cold insulation. In that aspect, Muffalo wool is slightly superior, but alpaca wool comes in close behind, and a parka made from alpaca wool will definitely keep Cambiar warm enough, even on the coldest winter days out on the ice sheet. So we are immediately sending Cambiar out for the first hauling trip, otherwise the wool will deteriorate pretty quickly, and as always we want to get as much out of it as possible. Back in the base, Cambiar then stops for a breakfast and a quick nap. Afterwards we can also quickly milk the Muffalo, before Cambiar then heads out for the second trip. And believe it or not, while he's on his way we get another cargo pod, this time containing some drugs. And even though I don't plan on using those, we will haul them back as well. After all, they can always be sold for a nice profit. Cambiar's second wool hauling trip then pretty much already concludes the day. We have a falling chunk of spacecraft late in the evening, but apart from that the day remains quiet and Cambiar more or less safely makes his way to bed. He did contract food poisoning from a piece of human meat here, but the effects of that will very likely already be gone in the morning. The next day then starts just like the previous one finished, with a lengthy hauling trip, this time however to the other side of the map. With the drugs then also safely in storage, Cambiar returns to the research bench, while in the stables we can see that our Muffalo has consumed the last bit of pemmican. This means we now have to feed it something else, and once again our choices are fairly limited here. In the end, the only thing that makes sense to use is the hops. It can be eaten raw by the Muffalo, however it cannot be used to make pemmican, and since we're not going to start brewing beer anytime soon, we might as well use it to keep the Muffalo alive. For the first big threat of the episode, Randy Random then chooses the middle of the night. Just like in the last episode, 3 Scythers attack, and even though in the last attack they did not get through our defenses, our trapped corridor is not guaranteed to work every time, and so we will have Cambiar quickly flick the switch here and turn on the turrets. Good thing by the way that we have a battery in place, because it's currently dark outside and we also have no wind. Alright, I'm not quite sure what actually downed the Scyther here, whether it was the trap or Cambiar's gun, and quite frankly I don't care, the end result remains the same. We have 2 Scythers dead and 1 down ready to be operated on, and luckily our turrets also did not have to get involved. So, after a bit of cleanup, we can start removing the Scyther blades. I have to say though, I'm hoping for a trader to pass by soon. All the Scyther blades in the world won't do us much good if we can't sell them. They do however increase the colony wealth, I believe, which in turn will lead to stronger and tougher raids. Case in point, the one that we just took care of. In the evening then, we have all the blades removed, the corpses safely stored away, the traps are rearmed, the Muffalo still has a bit of food, and so Cambiar can now hopefully get a peaceful night of sleep. At night we then get a solar flare, and I'm very happy this happened one day after the raid. Yes, we were able to take care of the Scythers without the help of our turrets, but admittedly it was a close call there in the end. The solar flare now shuts down all electrical equipment, and that of course also includes the 3 gun turrets. Luckily though, the solar flare doesn't last long and it is also immediately followed up by a set of cargo pods. Inside 80 units of steel, which is convenient, but we also don't need them right away. Steel does not deteriorate when left outside, and so first of all we'll have Cambiar fill up the stables with hops, before we then bring the steel back to the base. 80 units, by the way, a bit of an unfortunate amount, since Cambiar can only carry 75 units per trip. And before he makes the second one, we have important business to take care of. Not only can our buffalo be milked once again, but for only the second time in this playthrough we can also shear it. This now once again produces 100 units of buffalo wool, and with the 100 we already have, that will be enough to craft a brand new parka should we need one. The one that Cambiar is wearing at the moment is still going strong though, but especially in Rimworld it's always good to have a plan B. As Cambiar exits the stables, then the ice sheet is hit with an eclipse, but we still have enough wind to keep the power running. The day then continues pretty uneventful with a round of research. However, as the wind dies down, the power for the research bench goes out, and so Cambiar instead spends a few moments cleaning. On the next morning then the power is back and the eclipse has ended as well, and so another day of research begins. We are quickly interrupted though by another cargo drop. This time we have some emu leather, once again very conveniently placed at the other end of the map. Now, despite the fact that we have 134 units waiting for us here, we're only going to make one trip. We are not in desperate need of leather at the moment, but should we need to craft clothing out of a material that's not human leather, then the 75 units here could come in handy. That also already concludes the day, and so we meet back up with Cambiar on the next morning, where his attempt to get a few hours of research in is once again interrupted. This time, however, the cargo drop is more than worth it. 59 high explosive shells are waiting to be collected, and we will make sure to grab every last one of them. Now, the main use of high explosive shells is to fire them across the map with a mortar gun. Now, at the moment we don't have one, in parts also because we haven't researched it yet, but of course that doesn't mean that we cannot stock up on ammunition early. We are still a good while away from being able to produce these ourselves, and you never know when we might need them. Slightly inconvenient is the fact that Cambiar can only haul 25 of these at a time, and so unfortunately it takes him 3 trips and with that almost an entire day to bring everything back to the base. However, Cambiar then rewards himself with a nice round of sleep, and good news out on the ice sheet, it is now officially spring and we have successfully survived winter. Temperatures will now once again rise a bit, and that means we can uninstall the heater inside of the buffalo stables. It is no longer needed and we can save the power for our other utilities. After milking the buffalo, Cambiar then finally has a chance to sit down in front of the research bench, although not for long, because it's soon time to go to bed. Now, after sleeping late yesterday, Cambiar doesn't need to stay in bed long this time, and just as I was about to celebrate his high mood, Randy Random hits us with the countermeasure. A psychic drone now drops Cambiar's mood by -15, still for the moment we don't have to worry about mental breaks just yet. For a change, Cambiar then actually manages to do a few hours of research, and luckily the next interruption is one that we can take off inside of the base. An exotic goods trade ship is passing by, so let's see if we cannot sell or buy anything. By the way, if you're wondering, we're not using Cambiar's bowler hat for this, because his social skill is still 0 and so any bonuses applied will not have an effect. Now on the selling side, we're getting rid of all the drugs, including the Nutri-Amine, because honestly I don't see us craft something out of that anytime soon. Now comes the fun part, we are going to buy ourselves a Doomsday rocket launcher. The trader here has a Doomsday and a triple rocket launcher available, and even though the triple rocket launcher is of higher quality and has higher market value, we will go with the Doomsday version instead. I will explain why in just a moment. Now, in order to pay for this, we are finally selling some Scyther blades, 6 to be exact, to cover the costs and make a nice profit. And that's it, let's confirm the trade and we'll have Cambiar haul everything back inside. And the Doomsday rocket launcher has first priority, and let me quickly explain why I chose it over the triple rocket launcher. Now, the triple rocket launcher, as the name suggests, fires 3 projectiles. All of those projectiles will roughly hit the same area, with a pretty high damage and a decent area of effect. Now, the Doomsday rocket launcher only fires 1 single rocket. However, that one rocket not only produces a big explosion with a significantly higher blast radius, it also creates a few smaller explosions, spreading out the area of effect even more. It is therefore an excellent weapon against larger, more spread out groups of enemies, while the triple rocket launcher is better used against enemies who are closely grouped together or single very tough opponents. At the moment, for us, I think the Doomsday version makes a bit more sense. Our defenses are pretty good at taking down a small number even of well-protected enemies. However, they would struggle against larger groups of enemies, for example big groups of poorly protected tribalists, and that is exactly the type of enemy that the Doomsday rocket launcher is best used against. By the way, I feel like I need to mention this, both rocket launcher versions are single use only. That means the weapon is only good for one shot, and after that it will vanish and cannot be used again. If any of you have experience using both versions, then of course let me know which version you prefer. I think it really depends on the situation, and there are arguments for both types. Now, just as Cambiar gets up in the next morning, the trader leaves the comms range and the psychic drone also ends, and so the day once again begins with a few hours of uninterrupted research. As expected though, Randy Random goes for the diversion early, and so once again we get a nice little cargo drop at the edge of the map. Here we now have 55 units of chem fuel, which is a very valuable resource, as it can be used to craft mortar shells as well as pod launchers. Conveniently, we can also haul everything back in one go here, and so Cambiar can quickly make the trip. After returning, Cambiar then consumes the last bit of human meat inside of the base, and so I'm hoping for another small raid or an escape pod. While Cambiar is asleep then, we have another trade ship pass by, and this time it's a combat supplier, so let's see if they have anything of interest. And yes, they actually do, and because of that we are going to sell our bolt action rifle here. We no longer need it, as we are now going to purchase a charge rifle. Together with the assault rifle, the charge rifle is one of the best all-round weapons in the game. Many people prefer the assault rifle due to its increased range, but the trader here doesn't have one available, and the charge rifle will very likely also suit us just fine. We are also going to buy some medicine here. I couldn't decide between 6 and 16 for a while, but we have enough money to increase our stock a bit, and in the end I decided to go with 6. The last item on the shopping list are then EMP grenades, not because of their damage output, they don't have one, but because of their interesting tactical use, because among other things they can be used to temporarily stun mechanoids. And with the increased number of mechanoid raids the colony experiences, this could come in handy sooner rather than later. By far the most important item in this trade, however, was the charge rifle. That thing is a substantial upgrade over the machine pistol we currently have equipped, and I have a good feeling that it will make Cambiar's life out on the ice sheet a whole lot easier. Just after milking the buffalo, we can then see our animal companion has consumed the last bit of hops, and that means it is now once again time to cook some food. And in the absence of any plant matter that we can use to make pemmican, we are going to make simple meals here, once again entirely made out of meat, as it is the only resource we have readily available. A short while later then, we have 15 simple meals prepared, so let's quickly bring them up to the stables to give the buffalo something to eat. On the next day then, Cambiar once again spends a few hours researching, and it has almost become a tradition at this point, a cluster of cargo pods interrupts his efforts. This time though, we'll leave the contents inside B. We have absolutely no need for even more human leather. We already have 700 units stored in our base, and I have a good feeling that number will only increase over time. With another trade ship passing by in the afternoon, we are then forced to take a break though. This one is another exotic goods trader, which means we'll hopefully be able to sell the remaining Scyther blades. And yes, that is in fact also all we do here. The trader didn't really have anything in store that we need at the moment. We don't need to bother with sculptures at the moment. The monkeys that are offered here would not survive long out on the ice sheet, and so we only sell the remaining 4 blades for a nice profit of 3,200 silver. Our colony is now slowly but steadily getting wealthier, and I mentioned this already in the last episode. I think we should very soon look into recruiting a second colonist. For the moment though, Cambiar remains all on his own as he sits in front of the research bench, and even though his work has been interrupted quite frequently these past few days, the Geothermal Power research project is already more than halfway finished. This day then for a change passes by without any incidents. The next event takes place early in the next morning, and yes, it is the 4th trade ship in quick succession, and once again we're dealing with a combat supplier here. This one though didn't really have anything worth trading for. I wasn't feeling like spending a big pile of money on some power armor, especially since I want Cambiar to stay as far away from one-on-one combat as possible. This combat supplier unfortunately also had a charge rifle that was one quality level higher than ours, but we would operate at a huge loss if we were to sell that one for the slightly better version, so we'll simply stick with the normal quality charge rifle for the time being. Now 2 days of research in a row without any major interruptions, that is of course unacceptable for Randy Random, and so in the late afternoon he drops another group of cargo pods. Inside, more high explosive shells, 27 to be exact, and those are good enough to send Cambiar out at least once. We will haul 25 back to the base. A second trip for only 2 shells might not really be worth it, so yeah, let's be a bit decadent here. We are going to leave those 2 out there. On the return trip, then another trade ship passes by. This is the 5th one this episode, I believe, and once more it is a combat supplier, so let's see what they have to offer. Okay, really only 2 items of interest here. The first one would be the power armor, but that's way too expensive for us at the moment and probably also a bit early in the game. The other one is the assault rifle here, which I would have bought instead of the charge rifle earlier. Now, however, we already have a charge rifle, so we're not going to buy a second expensive weapon that serves pretty much the same purpose. We might re-evaluate our needs once we have a second colonist, but for the moment we won't spend any money here. And with that, Cambiar then once again heads off to bed. In the early morning, however, we have a rare sight out on the ice sheet. A group of thrumbos has wandered onto the map, without a doubt the single most powerful animal in the entire game. Now, with only one of them, I would have considered hunting it down. The horn of a thrumbo is immensely valuable and a very powerful melee weapon, but 2 of them I think that's a bit too much of a risk, and so we'll simply appreciate their appearance, but at least for today's episode we'll not do anything about them. If you desperately want me to risk the series and attempt a hunting trip, then by all means let me know, but for the moment we'll leave those 2 in peace. Cambiar meanwhile has found his way back to the workbench, and that is also where he will remain for the rest of the episode. Now, even though we didn't construct a whole lot in this episode, I still feel like we made some good progress. Our arsenal of weapons has improved quite a lot. Cambiar is now sporting a powerful charge rifle, and with EMP grenades and a doomsday rocket launcher, I think we should be well prepared for whatever Randy Random decides to throw at us next. The only thing that's missing at the moment is some human meat for Cambiar to consume, but I hope we can solve that problem in the next episode. Speaking of the next episode, for that one you will unfortunately have to wait a bit. I will be on holiday for the entire first week of May, and during that time I will of course not be able to record anything. So we'll take a 1-week break and the series will then continue in the second week of May, and then we'll of course pick up right where we left off. In the meantime, if you liked this episode, then go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and if you want to support the channel and haven't subscribed already, then go ahead and feel free to do so as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!